So we might as well like have a chat while people are still coming in here. We have 40 people on. Is there anybody currently on who is considering still running their field camp this summer?
This is John Geisman. Yes, we are at this point.
This is Larry Smith, Montana. We are planning on doing it for those that absolutely need it.
So sort of a small crew.
Yep.
And John, are you doing it for everybody with students from other schools as well?
We're getting inundated by students from other schools at this point. So like Larry, we're thinking about doing it just for the students who need it.
Yeah, this is Ray Weldon, University of Oregon. We're in the same situation. We're still technically on, but we have contingency plans just to do it for people who need to graduate.
Yeah, this is Ryan Goldie, Idaho State. We're still on as of now. We talked about pushing it back maybe. We'll see what happens.
This is Barbara John at the University of Wyoming. We have very little bandwidth, so I'm not going to use video. But anyway, I'm having a meeting right after this meeting with the other faculty involved. But right now, because the first 3 weeks of our field camp are in California, it's not on. So
this is Mindy Faulkner. I'm from Stephen F. Austin State University in Texas, and we have they've cleared out our dorms and everything else like that. So we've canceled our traveling field camp through New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah, and we're trying to design something for students that are either one remote or two that they can do possibly in small groups if we get permission from the university to do so.
Hi, this is Matt Reeves. I run the hydrogeology field course at Western Michigan University. We run the course twice a summer. We have a summer 1 and summer 2 session. Currently, Michigan was issued a stay in shelter order. So right now we feel that summer 1's probably not going to happen, but we're here to see. We hope that our summer and we're just going to wait and see what we do. We are already talking about some alternatives in terms of some remote field opportunities, showing how the data is collected, and then giving the students potentially accommodate some of the requests that we have.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Thanks for everyone joining in. My name is Chris Atchison. I'm at the University of Cincinnati. And if you have your microphone open, please mute yourselves so we don't have a lot of feedback. I see that most everyone is not using video, which is good as well to kind of keep the bandwidth down. If you have questions while we're going through here, feel free to use the chat window. If you have any questions, we're going to, towards the end, we'll try to open it up for discussion, but that could be pretty crazy with a lot of people on here. So I'm joined with Julie, Basil, and Doug. Appreciate their help getting this set up in very short time. And again, I appreciate all of you for joining us quickly to have a quick discussion about what we can do to support our students this summer, since it sounds like a majority of places are going to be, they have already or they are considering canceling their summer field courses. So let me see here. All right, so our agenda for this quick hour, we're going to talk about the purpose. I think we already kind of have an idea what the purpose is, but I have a few things I want to share with you. We're going to do a quick poll to kind of understand where everybody's at, what you are considering doing or able to do to support this process, this initiative. We have a few presenters that are going to share some ideas about this. from their perspectives to try and get us all thinking about what we can do differently. Then we're going to try and just open this up for discussion for about 15 minutes, which is certainly not going to be near enough. This could be something that would take us a while to really consider. But in that discussion, we'll talk about future or focus directions, priorities, and then even breaking down into discipline-specific working groups. Then we'll close this with discussion of some action items. I want to point you all to the URL below, the tiny URL below. That will take you to a Google spreadsheet that we are actually trying to collect information from people who have resources, materials that you're able to share, people who might want to group up into discipline-specific working groups. Please put your disciplines down there. So I'll share this URL again at the end of the webinar, but if you have it, just go ahead and follow that. All right, so some things that we need to consider while we discuss this today. This is not a webinar that's meant to tell you how to do anything. We're not trying to tell you how to fix the problem. The goal here is to rally around this community. We have a lot of people on board that have a lot of great experience doing various things around field-based learning, and we want to draw upon that. Understand that we cannot be everything to everyone. If we're sitting here talking about what a structural geology field course might look like, it's going to look very differently than some other disciplinary or a hydro camp or anything. There might be similar skills, but there also is a lot of different skills. So understanding this is going to be the need that we need to consider breaking down into smaller working groups to address it from multiple perspectives. Please remain open-minded while we have this discussion. There's going to be ideas all over the board, and understanding that instructional best practices evolve from various ideas. So just remain open-minded, flexible, and encourage each other. That's really the best that we can do with this right now. Think about backwards design when you consider how instructional planning is done. You should always start with your objectives and your assessment strategies. What is it that you want your students to know? Start there. Don't start with, okay, what are the materials and resources that I have available to me? Because some of the things that you might end up using might not be developed yet. So I want you all to consider starting with what you want your students to know at the very basic level. What is it that, what skills do you want them to know? What kind of content understanding do you want them to get out of this? So start backwards, start at the end, and then you design your activities and materials and resources around that. And then also try to realize that we're not trying to recreate the exact same in-person field trip that you run through a virtual simulation. That is not possible. You cannot recreate something that you do in person 100%. So understand that we're trying to take the objectives and figure out new and innovative ways to address those objectives. I've asked some folks to be on the call, some planetary and planetary scientists, ocean scientists, to discuss what it is they do, because realizing that they are doing field work and they've probably never been to the field site that they study. So let's think about that perspective as we move forward. With that, I want to go ahead and start by introducing Doug. We've got a list of presenters here. I think that we're all on board. I don't know if Anuj has made it or not, but we're going to go through this list here. So presenters, have a look, see who you're following. We're going to keep this to 3 minutes. Basil's going to time you on this. I've got everybody's slides ready to go. So when you hear Basil say stop, then you're going to get the hook. All right, Doug, you want to go ahead?
You want to do the poll now, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, please, let's open up that poll.
So it should have launched for everybody.
Yep, so you have 4 questions here. Just go ahead and answer those 4 questions for us, please.
And I'll leave the polling open for a while here, obviously. Do you want me to share my screen while the poll results come in?
Yeah, that'd be great, Doug.
Doug, we're just seeing your Zoom webpage there. We're not seeing the poll.
Okay.
Yeah, click on your active screen wherever the poll is.
Sorry. I thought I did that. Just a second, sorry about this. Are you seeing the poll now?
Nope.
Not yet. We're still on your Zoom screen.
I think you're probably stop sharing and restart with
I just
your whole
did that
desktop.
and
I think
selected
you're
the
probably
screen
sharing
that
one window.
had this, so let me try it again. So you guys get to see me fiddling around.
I'm guessing you shared just one window instead of your desktop. And if you restart sharing your whole desktop, you'll be able to see it.
No, it says I'm.
Doug, do you want to just go ahead and give us a description of what you're seeing on those 4 results?
Yeah, I sure will. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
So right now we have about 130 responses. Question number 1 is 28% yes, 13% no, 58% unsure. Number 2.
And that was for the cancellation, correct?
Right. So 28% canceling, 13 are not, and 58 don't know. For how prepared are you? 4% are ready, 55% are working on it, 37% have not started, and 4% say they can't do it. Are you interested in joining a disciplinary working group? 70% say yes, 4% say no, and 26% say unsure. And would you find a central website to host ensure resources helpful? 95% say yes.
Okay.
And we have 131 votes.
All right, very good. Thank you for those, Doug. All right, we'll get back to our quick presentations again. 3 minutes. Basil's going to moderate, and we'll go ahead and get started with you, Doug.
I gotta stop sharing here just a second. Am I still sharing?
Nope, I am.
You are, okay.
Yep, I'm on it.
Then I gotta get my screen so I can see what I'm talking about. Sorry.
You're fine.
All right, so yeah, this is Strava Spot. It's available at the App Store and Google Play. It's something we've been using at KU for a while, and I was planning on working with this and then Basil and Julie to possibly do a virtual field course. I've just shown 3 screens here. The left screen is the map. The middle screen is the information about one of the structural measurements. You can record structural measurements. The little compassy looking thing there is a compass, which of course wouldn't work virtually, but anyway, there are screens like this for measurements, and you can see at the lower part, it has quality, feature type, foliation type. All of those are sensitive. They all have logic that connects them together. And basically you can do this for most things you do in the field: structural measurements, rock descriptions, sedimentary sections. You can measure sedimentary sections with this. So there's a lot of flexibility, and part of this is aimed at guiding the students through observations. And a lot of the comments we get back is that the students appreciate this because it helps them make observations they wouldn't know or wouldn't remember to make otherwise. The right part shows a photograph, and that's one of the things that we do a lot of in Strabo spots. So for this particular measurement that I show here for the edit plane, you can take as many photographs and put those associated with that measurement as you want. So my plan to start this up was, we have about 100 different students' projects that are in Strabo that have pictures for all kinds of spots. There's 2 map areas at our field camp that we have really, really extensive projects and pictures for. So my thought was to go through and mine those and start putting together virtual outcrops of the areas, pick out the best photos. And I was starting to think about how students could lead themselves through those for a mapping project. And so this would be a little bit centric towards reproducing it, but it would also make them observe things at outcrops and that sort of thing. Those results that I have are fully vetted by our IAB, and I could make those available to anybody who wanted to use them. And that's it.
Thank you, Doug. All right, next. I lost my list, so I don't remember who's next. Erica.
Erica, you're muted if you didn't know that.
Sorry, I had 2 mute buttons on. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
You're a little soft.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I need a new microphone. That's what this whole exercise has taught me. Okay, yeah, so I wanted to share with you guys something that the University of Idaho Field Camp is going to be doing. We plan on running our field camp virtually, and we are thinking about opening it up to other students, so stay tuned for that. But if you're interested in trying to do some of these activities, we've been building geologic maps in Minecraft, which is a easy to use, pretty cheap platform. It's a video game that a lot of the students already have some familiarity with. And the nice thing about it is that it's a very easy to make maps in. And so you can create basically any real topography from you can download the DEMs from that and then put it straight into put it into the Minecraft building program, which is open source and free. And then you can draw on the surface, the geology. Right now, I haven't been able to quite figure out how to. I know there's another program where you can start doing subsurface drawing as well and building. So I'm gonna probably get involved in that in the next couple of weeks. But for now, we can definitely make worlds that you can walk through and explore the surface expression of the geology. And you can put that, because the topography is so good in Minecraft, you can put that directly onto your map. So you can locate outcrops and you can see what, fake rock type they are, and then mark your location on your map And hopefully we'll be able to bring in rock ID with actual sort of 3D outcrops, as well as measuring strikes and dips in the game, which we're working on right now. So if you want to go to the next slide, there's a little video that you could play. This is a Minecraft geology world that was built by Canadian Geological Survey, I believe, of Dinosaur Provincial Park. So you can see the way Minecraft is, it's all these giant blocks. So it's, you know, that's why you can build these giant worlds. It's very easy to render and quick. And you can see the layered strata across the river there. And so this is just sort of one example of a very simple geological situation. And we're kind of building off of this and putting in different layers and contacts and things like that.
Great, thank you.
Excellent.
And you did say you are running it virtually this summer, is that right?
Yeah, we are.
All right, good. Thank you, Erica. I'm going to jump back to my list. I'm trying to write these down really quickly. Helen will be next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so just a tiny bit of background. I am from a Scottish university, Heriot-Watt University in Scotland, and we run 4 master's programs in petroleum geology to petroleum engineering. So these, we were due to basically start running field trips next week. So all of our field trips are, of course, cancelled because that is rather close, and the university is, in fact, at the moment pretty much shut down. So no classroom teaching at all, or even in office time. Anyway, so what I have access to is our virtual learning environment. So I thought I'd just share my little progress in terms of turning our virtual learning environment into a virtual field trip. So we're using Blackboard, but of course Canvas and various other platforms are out there. I'm assuming that most universities have got these days a virtual learning environment of some kind in which you're posting lectures and course notes and things like that. This is just me taking one of those pages and adding in a little introduction, and then adding in a list. Basically, what I'm doing for these students, this particular field trip, the outcome is to look at the particular geology of a particular area, which we would normally walk them around. So I have just created a folder for all the different outcrops, and then for each folder contains some details. I'm really lucky in that RPG has decided to share with us their Nautilus outcrop database, which has got beautiful 3D images of a number of outcrops around the world, in fact. So if you want to get in touch with Gary Nichols, I posted his address on LinkedIn if you want to find him. Then he might let you have access to some of those, and they really are very nice little images and models and fly-throughs and things. But anyway, so that page then is the information for each of the locations, and then there's a test at the bottom. And the test is just out of the software that we're using. So you just set up the test in the software, and it helps me to, well, it's going to, because still dealing with huge tense here, help me track the students as they sort of work through the materials. It's just short little multi-choice questions to make sure that they're actually seeing things in the photographs that I need them to see, which they would have seen at the outcrops. So the idea, basically, provide them with all the information, photographs and videos and little outcrop models from previous trips and other people's data, and then hopefully direct them to the things that they would have seen, that would have discussed in the field. We're also planning on running some Collaborate sessions, this being Blackboard, it's Collaborate Ultra, but any kind of VC or Zoom or some kind of session would be the same with the students while they would have been in the field, so next week and the week after. And we're hoping that that will kind of replace the activities that we would have done. Obviously, this is not a mapping project because these are not actually geology students, so to speak. But that is how we're trying to solve our fact-finding expeditions that we were going to be going on. So that's it.
Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you, Helen. Give me 1 second. Des, you're going to be next. I just want to look at the list. Okay.
Brilliant. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks. Probably a slight delay. Hi, everybody. My name's Des McDougall, and I'm a physical geographer from the University of Worcester. I've long dabbled in virtual fieldwork, and today I'd like to highlight VR glaciers and glaciated landscapes. This is a free online resource that provides immersive ground-level virtual field trips to 13 locations in Switzerland, Northwest England here in the UK, and also California. The immersive design of each virtual field trip allows you to look all around and zoom in on features of interest as you travel through the landscape, moving from one site to the next. All that's required to view these resources is an internet-connected device such as a smartphone, tablet, or desktop PC. And it works in a similar way to Google Street View, but the quality is better. Yep, the emphasis is on glaciers and glaciated landscapes, but the virtual field trips can be used more generally to explore mountain environments and landscapes. The role of VR Glaciers is to support class and lab-based teaching, including preparation and follow-up to real fieldwork. I've always been at pains to point out that it's not a replacement for real fieldwork. Having said that, these are exceptional times. Just echoing what other people have been saying, all our field trips have been postponed, if not cancelled altogether. And even if there wasn't a global pandemic, virtual fieldwork can have a role to play in terms of inclusivity if real fieldwork simply isn't an option. One of the key features of VR Glaciers, and it's something of a double-edged sword, is that the tours are provided without guidance. This is done deliberately, so the virtual fieldwork can be used at any academic level and for a range of purposes. The downside, however, is that the instructor needs to provide their own interpretation and develop their own resources for students. And this is clearly something of a barrier for busy members of staff. And for this reason, I'm in the process of developing worksheets with answers for one of the virtual field trips. It's a Mare Glacier one. And I'm happy to share these with colleagues. And if you're interested, please drop me an email. And I'll add it to the spreadsheet at the end as well. I'm also in the process of developing an online password-protected forum just for instructors where such resources can be shared in a secure environment. The thinking here is I don't want all the answers to be made available to students if they're going to use it for assessment anyway. At Worcester, I've used the virtual field trips in a number of different ways, including for assessment. For example, worksheets provide a structured way for students to navigate their way through a landscape. For more experienced and confident groups, student-led guided tours place students in the role of field trip leaders and requires them to interpret the geomorphology of a given area and identify key sites and themes. The tours can be presented online, in class, or take the form of a written assignment.
Okay,
It's worth noting
if you could just finish up, that'd be great.
Brilliant. Okay. It also works well for mapping as well. I can use alongside GIS software as well. So drop me a line if you're interested in collaborating. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Des. All right, Don, you're up. Actually, no, I think Nick's up. Nick.
No, I think I was next.
Wait, is that you?
Yeah, there's me.
That's you. You're right.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. So these are a couple of screen grabs from a page titled Technical Tools of Real and Virtual Fieldwork for Scientific Inquiry. If you click once more, there will be a pop-up with the URL for that. And it's also linked from the agenda for the webinar that PRI is doing Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And you can see a range of resources linked from that webinar agenda. This is focused on technical tools for getting information about field sites and for capturing field sites. We've worked on virtual fieldwork for a long time, and our goal has always been for it to be a catalyst for actual fieldwork. And I think that if we get students thinking about the fieldwork that they can do within walking distances of wherever they are right now, and sharing that with their classmates, that's a real opportunity for digging into your local environment and processing it in a way that you can share it with others. Lots of tools there. Some of them you're probably familiar with, some of them probably not. Some of, depending on what tools you've got, you can take gigapans and share those. Probably not too many of your students have a gigapan at home. We also have a range of virtual fieldwork experiences that are created. And again, you can see that linked from the agenda for Wednesday's webinar. And for the sake of time, I'll stop with that.
Thanks, Don. All right, Nick, Nick, are you on? Nick doesn't have a slide, so he's just going to talk to us about what he's working on.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. I might attempt to share my screen in a second here. Yeah, I'm Nick Barth. I'm at University of California, Riverside. I usually teach our summer field course, which is between 4 to 5 weeks. We usually have a longer traditional mapping project and then shorter 1 to 3 day sort of projects, many of which include digital mapping. So that's something I've been really interested in exposing the students to. One of the things I was pretty interested in trying to do is see if there's a way to still get the students to do field work. And one of the things that might be a little bit unique among our student population is many of them tend to be from the area close to campus. And so I'm currently trying to gather feedback from the students of where they think they're going to be located in a couple months' time. But my hope is that they might be able to map individually an area near campus. And then we'd be able to pool that data. And one of the things that got me, I cannot start sharing screen while others.
Hang on 1 second, Nick.
That's okay.
Go for it.
Okay. There we go. Is that working?
Yes.
The screen. So one of the things that got me really interested is what California Geologic Survey's response was to the Ridgecrest earthquake. Is they used Collector for ArcGIS, which is a free app that you can use on a smartphone or a tablet. And what was really neat about it is that it enabled about 40 different scientists to have all their information dynamically being uploaded to the same map that was then web accessible. And so, yeah, I thought this was a pretty unique situation where you can set up a project, you can set up a form however you want with what you want the students to be able to fill out. And so all this, again, requires that the students are locally based, that they're able to transport themselves, and that they have access to a smartphone. We have about 16 students. I do have a class set of iPads, so we could potentially issue them if they're not able to do that on their own. And so one of the things I was really thinking about is how to maximize student interaction, even though people are supposed to be physically isolated. And so that's why I like this idea of maybe a crowdsourced map. Something like Zoom or Blackboard, which has more like chat offline or anytime kind of chat functionality to try and encourage the students to coordinate and kind of iterate to produce a better map. I just threw up a question of who's responsible for student safety in this sort of scenario. And so my last slide here, this is just an example. Here's our campus right here. A number of students are within about a half hour or much less than the surrounding area. And we're very fortunate of having this nice mountain park area with multiple granitic intrusions that they could potentially map. And so that was the idea I wanted to share.
Excellent. Thank you, Nick. Go ahead and stop sharing on your side. All right, Margaret. If you're on, you're muted. You there, Margaret?
Now, can you hear me now?
There you are. Yes, thank you.
Apparently my headphones aren't working, so
that's fine.
Go to the whole thing. Okay, so I've University of Arkansas Little Rock is where I am, and we have for several years done alternate field camp projects for students who have, for various reasons, not been able to attend our more traditional summer field camp. And we've used data that we've collected both from our camp that we teach in Colorado, and then also I'm involved with James Madison's University's Ireland field camp, and so I have data from those projects as well. And I've set up projects for our students to do using Google Earth as base map. In the United States, the TopoView overlays, DEM hillshade overlays, any kind of overlay that you can think of to put into Google Earth. Again, geologic data sets that already exist. So maybe they're in a field notebook and you can just, make a PDF and send it to the students, or you can be nice and put it in a spreadsheet. What I have done is put it into UTM coordinates, so they have to actually plot it. The very first one I do with them is actually have them plot it paper-wise. And then maybe if they're able to move on to maybe using GIS if they have that ability. So yeah, field notebook, archival data, Strabo spot data, other archives that we might have. And I've delivered it in daily transect chunks and then kind of asked them to, think about first principles. So if, you have a daily transect of maybe 10 or 15 data points and everything is dipping the same way, what would you expect to see if you keep going north? What would you expect to see if you keep going south? What would be your plan the next day? So sort of get them to think about coverage strategies. So, they're not actually doing field work, but try to help them to think about if they were on the ground, where would they go next? Also the hypothesis test. So if everything's sort of simple and all dipping the same way, which way is younger, which way is older? Now let's go test that hypothesis. You can get pretty fancy, of course, with Google Earth and put in things like fly-throughs and links and pictures and 3D objects and all that. Last year I actually took a drone out, and I do have some drone imagery of two of the field areas that we use in Colorado. So add that. Although my goal right now is to be very simple, to not use too much bandwidth, and to try to not have them have to use too many software products. Let's see, Google Classroom. This is something that I've just gotten into in the last year. It's really easy learning management system. We are a Google campus, so every student in our campus has Gmail, and so they have access to Google Classroom and all of the apps, which is nice. Very efficient delivery of documents to each individual student, easy interactions with comments, edits, the drawing tool. And again, the products can be kind of your traditional mapping products, a map, a cross-section. Hand-drawn is how we kind of do it to begin with. Stereo nets, reports, and instead of field notes, it's more like field strategy notes. What was your hypothesis? How did you test it? What's your ideas of trying to cover the field area? How did you use your air photo interpretation? How did you use your topographic maps? All those things.
Margaret, if you could
kind of
summarize
understand that.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Margaret.
Yeah.
Anuj, I don't know if Anuj is on. I haven't heard from him. If you're on there, Anuj, let's hear from you. Okay. I'm going to move on then. Brian.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, this may not be as well developed as the previous ones that people have run before. We have a field camp at Texas A&M that has been canceled, so we need exercises or something for students to do. There is, from the various planetary missions out there, a wealth of data, particularly for Mars, where we have a rover climbing up a mountain. We have orbital images that have been gradually turned into geologic maps that you can see somewhat exposed on this slide. They have been turned into cross sections. There are on-lap relationships. There are rock textural images that you can see at the bottom. There are efforts to classify these things into different units. All of this has been done in a variety of manuscripts. I grabbed one from Dr. P. Stack Morgan's 2016 paper here, just as an example. And I'm probably going to do something like this, although I don't know exactly how I'm going to. But some version of asking the students to go from a map to a cross-section to some sort of interpretation so that they get some training in how to take a map and think about what's going on beneath the subsurface while testing various hypotheses.
Excellent, Brian. Thank you so much for that. And then finally, Dan.
Okay, is the audio working?
Sounds great, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so this is a bit of a plug for the project that's been going on over in Leeds for a little while. So we've built an array of free-to-air digital resources. These are effectively first-person computer games. They can drop you into a landscape, you wander around, find outcrops. and click on the outcrop, and it gives you a notebook entry, and then you can transfer that over to a field slip you're actually working on in the classroom. So we have a variety of those there. First one we made is Three River Hills. No longer runs through a browser direct, but you can download an executable that runs on PC. Lighthouse Bay will run through a browser. It's quite a basic one, usually it's probably good for first year students, those who've never mapped before. Introduces idea of vegetation and colour of landscape, and the idea of interaction of structure with landscape. So you can stand on the hillside and look at the V-ing of the contacts into the valleys mapped out in the vegetation, and then you can go and check that with a variety of outcrops to put that on. They come with resources like blank field slips, but otherwise they're very open-ended. The idea is that these are quite like a real field area in that regard, in as much as students are free to dictate how they wander around and how they interact with the outcrops, and staff can set different exercises as they see appropriate. So in that sense, we have that open-endedness of a real field area, trying to get in there. Obviously, these are not replacements, but they get a lot of the same concepts of mapping skills across in a quite safe and, for the UK, quite dry environment. The Roscollin one's probably our most advanced that we're currently working on. We're trying to use that at the moment to try and replace what would normally be a 3-day field task with as much as we can that's context specific to that area. And also there you've got 3D geological and topographic maps, which are useful for introducing students to the idea of how geometry works. Those projections you see there can be spun, look at them in different directions, and get a feeling for both how strata interact with topography and how topography works.
Excellent, Dan. Thank you. I will also plug Dan's work with Jackie Houghton, Allison Stokes. That I was over there with them, and we actually ended up using the Roscollin virtual landscape. We were running a field, an 8-day field course for students with disabilities in Wales. And on the day that we were actually going to go to Roscollin, we woke up with sideways rain and ended up not going in the field and instead using the virtual landscape, which actually, when coupled with thin sections and hand samples and all the different types of materials that you would use in the field, actually presented a really nice field day. So that's a great example of how these things can be utilized for our benefit. So I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that experience too. Thank you, Dan. All right, Basil?
Yeah, sure. In terms of moving on, the last thing we had, I don't know if Kurt Burmeister's on the call. If he is, he can unmute. I asked him, because he teaches the Winter Wasatch Camp, to just come up with sort of what a traditional field camp, the learning objectives were. He doesn't mean this to be prescriptive, but just in terms of if we wanted to come up with some consensus, the idea that we could might be able to develop these lists, and this might be a good opportunity for us as a community to do this, which we might have been a little bit more lax about in the past. So what you see are program learning objectives. And if we go to the next slide, it should be skills that people want. And so
we'll share these out too. This is a lot of text on these 2 slides.
Exactly. But in terms of just those different goals and skills, the one thing I'd like to do is give an opportunity for people that Chris asked to talk to. So people from the planetary community or from oceanography community or do oceanographic work, if they had anything they wanted to say or inform us about their work that might be useful for this community to hear.
Basil, this is Kurt, I am here too.
Oh, Kurt, did you want to say anything else?
Just to maybe qualify that list, I remember I was talking with Basil about this yesterday. I remember Eric Powell wrote a paper about 10 years ago that very, very nicely highlighted the fact that we've been doing these field camps for decades and decades, but many of us have not given the same level of kind of critique to the learning objectives and the skills that we want our students to come away with. We kind of have an idea of a recipe that works, and we've been going with it. And maybe this is a good opportunity for us to kind of collectively think about putting some of those lists down on paper to help focus our efforts when it comes to developing activities that might suit one or more of these program learning objectives to help kind of prevent duplicating efforts and things like that. This list that I came up with is not my own. I kind of chewed on my own experience and then grabbed a number of examples from things that I found online, in particular Kent State, University of Oklahoma, Albion College, and Illinois State all had kind of fairly comprehensive reviews of their learning objectives and stuff. And so I borrowed heavily from them. But yeah, just kind of an initial stab at this idea of thinking about kind of focusing efforts and coming up with content that's more targeted and less kind of specific to one particular school or program or area.
And Kurt Walter, while you have the floor, you had an interesting idea that you came across about using some of CERC's or NAGT's.
Yeah, that's right. So one of the things, you know, because at Wasatch Uinta, we've been talking over a number of years about kind of developing or exploring ideas for alternative activities. And one of the things that was always caused us kind of a little bit of pause when it comes to putting things online is the risk of actually making those things publicly available and jeopardizing kind of the curriculum in future years, students sharing whatnot. And if we move forward and develop activities that we intend to share, maybe this is actually a really, really good opportunity in itself, because if each camp or program that's interested in participating can contribute maybe one or two of their activities that are, I guess, kind of low-hanging fruit, maybe things that happen towards the beginning of your program, not final exam types of activities and stuff, that if everybody is kind of sharing maybe only 10 or 20% of their program, then there still is 80% of the program in future years that students will not have access to. And that might kind of be a way to share the blow of kind of making our teaching materials, cross-sections, map keys, unit descriptions, all those things publicly available. And if we do decide to host these materials on something like CERC, it is possible for that component or selected components of that area of CERC to be put on a lockdown, so to speak, where potential users would have to get a key to gain access to those materials. Now, once those materials are used in a Canvas site at a particular university, they will become publicly available, but it's not something that, you know, students or other people in the future can go in and just kind of wholesale mine out resources and distribute freely.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Okay, so does anybody from the planetary community or does oceanographic work want to speak up at this point?
I could say a really quick comment. This is Barbara John at the University of Wyoming. Yes, I live in a very landlocked place, but I do a lot of marine geology. And one really simple thing that could be done is just looking at the difference in sort of bathymetry of fast-spreading mid-ocean ridges versus slow-spreading mid-ocean ridges. And the way to do that is simply to go to GeoMap app, which is a free program hosted at Lamont. And because the processes on the seafloor are either magmatic, tectonic, or mass wasting, but limited mass wasting, you can simply sort of go and zoom in on a spot on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, as an example, which is a slow-spreading mid-ocean ridge, and look at the bathymetry and start to interpret it in terms of it's dominantly faultic. In contrast to going to the East Pacific Rise and zoom in at 9 North or somewhere like that, where there's volcanic edifices everywhere and tiny, tiny, tiny normal faults. And this is a way for students to potentially learn something about 60% of the Earth that we rarely interpret. So if people have any sort of questions, because this is a 10-second preview, please contact me. I'm just bjohn@uwyo.edu.
Thank you, Barbara. It's actually an interesting idea to sort of break out from our traditional edges of our field area for doing this.
Hey, Basil.
Want to add?
Basil, if I could jump in real quick. Barbara, thanks for that information. If I can ask everyone to jump on that Google spreadsheet and at the very least just put your name and email address down so that we can have access. I can share this recording with you, or I could share the notes with you or anything like that, just so we have access to everyone who wants to be accessed, I should say. So if you can, please jump on that spreadsheet. I will share the link here just momentarily again.
Okay. Does anybody else, planetary or otherwise, want to say something?
You mind if I jump in? This is Jen Piatek. I was going to give just a quick planetary some ideas. So I'm a Martian geologist, and so when I think about doing virtual fieldwork, I think about Mars. Honestly, with the Moon and Mars, you've got an opportunity to do a lot of sort of orbital satellite aerial fieldwork without all of those annoying green things in the way. So there's a couple of links that might be useful. You can get to the Moon, you can get to Mars from Google Earth. So you have an opportunity there to use a familiar interface to look at some of those. And then there's also, I've put a link in the chat to JMars, which is a planetary GIS. It was originally built to help plan Mars observations. But it actually has data sets from most of the solar system now that you can go in and do a lot of the things that maybe you would do in an ArcGIS or a GIS environment. And it's free. It's from jmars.asu.edu. And it has some useful tutorials there as well. Something that I saw go by on a slide, if you're thinking about observations and interpretations, this is something I think we struggle with in planetary a lot, is, you know, we see layered rocks and you immediately want to say, okay, those are sediments, they're bedding, they're whatnot. And you're actually interpreting before you've even finished your observations. So that's an opportunity to help to separate and figure out where you're making assumptions about something that you don't necessarily know. And again, my info is in the spreadsheet if anybody would like more information.
Excellent, Jen. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so we were trying to keep it to an hour, which was a very lofty goal. I think we want to move towards focus directions, priorities, and working groups. What I'm struck with is how many good resources are out there, but we're not doing a good job of letting each other know what's going on at this point. I don't know how to sort of do this, but it seems like from the poll results that a lot of people would like some sort of shared resource so this community, and there's a lot of other people I know who have teaching tools out there, could put them on. So the problem, of course, is that there's no resources to do this, but it's possible that we could get some kind of resources. We could ask NSF for something like this. We could, the Structural Geology and Tectonics Division of GSA might do something like that. So I guess one thing, on the bottom of your screen, you have a reactions tab and if you press that, you've got sort of a thumbs up and a clap. So I guess my question is, having seen all this, would people support going to basically try and work towards getting some resources to get someone like CERC or NAGT or them in collaboration to host a web page very quickly to try and centralize these tools for everybody? Chris, is that okay thing to do?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you think that's a good idea, will you hit the reactions for a thumbs up? And Doug, we can't. That's going to show up on Doug's screen, I think, rather than
I think so too. I think so too. You know, another thing to consider here too, Basil, is that we don't anticipate that this is going to be a one and done community meeting. I'm thinking if we start effectively breaking into smaller working groups, having a way for those working groups to kind of coordinate, but also come back together in a larger community to share out and to share ideas and to offer feedback. I think that there's going to be some value to doing that. I'm not sure exactly what that would look like or how we would go about doing that, with exception of just off the top of my head, having weekly meetings just like this, just an hour-long weekly get together to kind of see where everybody stands, what's needed, what we can do to support each other, and so on. If you think that that's a good idea, I'd like to hear from you as well. We can continue to offer these kinds of gatherings if everyone thinks that would be helpful.
Right. And I think the issue, I think that's exactly right. The issue is it worth breaking down for a couple weeks? So like the traditional field camps go together, the hydro field camps go together, and so forth. Or is it worth like having another big meeting to try and do this? I feel like people aren't getting to say what they want to do in some useful way.
Yeah, and I think that if we do break down in those disciplinary specific groups, and that people will be able to address very specific problems and that they see. I gotta call out Anita Marshall's reference to this. If you've all seen the movie Apollo 13, when they were all dumping everything out of their boxes and say, okay, here's what we have available. Now, how are we going to solve the problem? That's essentially where we're at right now. And so I think we need to get people, very specialized groups working together around their very specific field courses at this point, and then coming back together as a larger community and sharing those out.
I agree. So Doug, some people are not finding reactions, which is fine. We have the poll. Doug, do you have sort of a count or something on your computer?
I've got the poll results, and I think we'll just go with them because it was over 95% in favor of doing that. And there were no thumbs down when the thumbs came up. I can't see all 150 some people at once. So, but I think we've got a good sense.
We need to get Doug a bigger screen.
It's like 5 feet across.
So I guess the question is, do we go to smaller groups from here and let those folks self-organize? What's the best thing we could do?
Yeah, so I'm open to suggestions on that.
And you have the comments, or if someone wants to speak to it.
You could go into the Google Doc and people could start signing up for different interest groups. So put 3 or 4 different interest groups, and then we can schedule meetings for those groups.
Okay, I'm gonna pull that up here.
Groups.
Just give me a minute. I'm gonna pull that up. Okay. It's good to see a lot of you are hitting the Google spreadsheet. Thank you for spending time in there. So if you could all, so the way that I saw this in the topical area here, it would be a great way to breaking folks down into more discipline specific areas. I think what would be most helpful is if we could identify or if we could have folks self-identify as a coordinator of specific topical groups. I put the list here of people would be interested in participating, and it looks like a majority of you would be. And if there are folks who want to try to coordinate, and that's kind of the reason why we asked for everyone's email address here, I think that might be one of the ways to go about coordinating everyone, is if we can get someone specific to reach out to everyone that has signed up to topical areas that are similar.
Hi, this is Glenn Dolphin from University of Calgary.
Hi, Glenn.
I wonder if I might make a suggestion also, because there seems to be a number of different kinds of platforms. So some people are using Sketchfab, some people are using Google Earth. Maybe those could also be groups rather than just, you know, breaking up into subdisciplinary geology groups, but maybe platform groups as well, because then people can work on particular aspects that suit them better. Maybe, I don't know, just a suggestion.
Yeah, it's a good one, Glenn. Thanks for sharing that. I'm wondering too, though, if we broke into the disciplinary topics and then broke even further into those platform areas.
That's quite possible.
Yeah.
This is Ann Egger. Thanks you guys very much for getting this together. And I just wanted to mention some of the things that NAGT can help with here. I mean, we're very good at supporting groups in these kinds of endeavors, and maybe you know, if everyone can put their interests on this spreadsheet, you can do a little work offline to set up some groups or some possibilities for groups, and then people could sign up for what they're interested in. Maybe it's going to be platform based, which is a great suggestion, or it could be disciplinary based, or it could be regional, and people might want to focus on collaborating with people in their region too. But we could do some of that a little bit offline and help you set that up, and then ask people to sign up that way too.
Yeah, that's really great. Thanks, Ann, for that.
I guess the one thing I would add here is I'll be in touch with GSA to see what they can offer to the community as far as meeting spaces and resources as well. Okay, so I think while we kind of wrap this up, we have 2 minutes left. And Basil, I'm just going to throw out that if people have specific questions or follow-up ideas that they would like to share with us, and then we can distribute those more to the broader community, I'm going to collect email addresses off of this Google spreadsheet and then send out a follow-up to this meeting so that everybody has notes and has the recording. If they want to share that out even further, please feel free to do so. If you have specific questions or comments or thoughts, feel free to email me right here. It looks like John jumped up here and put his email address on the title area. That's fine. I appreciate you, John.
Chris,
yes,
this is Kurt Burmeister again.
Hi, Kurt.
I'll get to the spreadsheet when I get a chance here, but just wanted to pitch in that I'm more than happy to participate at a kind of curriculum development level, but if I can also contribute anything in terms of connectivity or getting the message out through NAGT USGS, or if you folks want me to lean on USGS for.
Okay, that sounds great, Kirk. I appreciate that. And that really should be another topical area as well. If people are like Kurt, who have that kind of instructional design focus, interest, and experience, that could be an area that we could support all of the different subgroups. So if anyone has that experience and wants to participate that way, please throw that into the subdiscipline or put it into the notes section so that we know how to reach you. And with that, our hour is up. I will be reaching out to all of you. If you have anything specific, questions, comments, concerns, ideas for support for moving this community forward, I would love to hear from you. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Basil if you have any final comments.
I have no other final comments. Thank you again, everyone, for coming and people for sharing their ideas. And we will be in touch.
Excellent.
All right. Well, I will stop recording at this point.
All right. Thank you all.